Tom, briefly, what was your background leading up to WHFS?
I was programming a radio station on Long Island called WRCN, which was pretty much at the time a alternative slash rock hybrid. And it was very weird how it happened. Someone had taken the job, and I remember who it was. I was there for like a month and left, and then I called Alan Hay up, the GM at the time, and I said, "Hey, here you have an opening." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Can I send you my resume?" And I did. We had some great conversations, and then Dennis Constantine, who was consulting the station at the time, called me as well. Took the train down to D.C. I got the job in a week or two. The funny story was Max Tolkoff was also up for the job. But Max is really the primary reason why I got the job, because Max told the GM, the guy you should be hiring is Tom, not me.
Really? Was Max at FNX at the time?
I was at FNX at the time, yeah.
Okay.
So I owe him that big favor.
Okay. So you were not the first PD under the Duchess Soie era, right?
No, I was. I did work for them. That's the only company I worked for. No, David Einstein was there for a brief moment, and technically that's who I replaced.
Okay. And so Alan Hay, in a way, replaced Jake Einstein.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so when you first got there, what was your game plan with the station?
Wow, that's a loaded question. My game plan was to play some music that people were familiar with. I mean, I remember taking the train down and hearing the station, and I guess someone had bought a car. One of the DJs bought a car, did an hour of songs about cars or something like that, and then I heard music, no exaggeration, from Robert Cray to Sonic Youth. It was like a station that truly was all over the place. It just needed to be a little more focused. I mean, we needed the station to be adventurous and cutting edge, but not to the point where we were alienating, listeners at that time. Plus, we had, the funny thing was that the station moved to 99.1, which gave it a 50,000 watt signal from a 3,000 watt signal, months before then.
Right. Now, at the time, Rock 40 had been attempted in different markets, and there were other mainstream formats trying to incorporate alternative music.
Yeah.
Did you think the station could be competitive as an alternative?
Oh, absolutely, because, from the research we saw, there was a huge hole for a great up-the-middle alternative radio station. My challenge was not necessarily also to create what was going through the speakers, but also create a different environment internally as well, and that is getting people to be more competitive and understand that, our competition is, way at the time, Wave 98 Rock and, stations like that.
Did you believe that you had to borrow hits from either CHR or AOR?
No, there were enough alternative hits the station wasn't playing before I got there that we were okay, just by leaning on songs that weren't even getting played at the time when I was there.
Now I forget. Did you say you arrived in 90 or 89 or?
I think it was 90.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 90.
How did you deal with HFS serving two major markets?
Believe it or not, as much as to the outside world, it probably looked like this really great thing, but it did create a lot of problems because you're talking about the state of Maryland, Northern Virginia, cities like Baltimore, D.C., the shoreline. That was a lot of territory to cover. But the bread and butter financially was always going to be Washington D.C. Just based on the advertising rates and revenue and everything else. So. We always were, pretty much our eye was always on D.C. Baltimore, we didn't ignore. We did promotions up there, and we always talked about Baltimore. But at the end of the day, we were, even in Duchess Soie's eyes, we were always judged on our D.C. book.
Now, who were some of the people that you hired?
Let's see. I hired, probably my most famous hire would be Howie Green. Howie and I went to college together. He was living in D.C., got in touch with him again, and had him come on the air and do a show called Speak Your Mind. To be really frank with you, I didn't have a lot of hires. There were some part-timers we moved up. There was a lot of lot of on-air changes. We're just trying to find out, figure out how to use the people that were there, and just work with them and see if we can get them.
So you still had Weasel and
Oh, yeah, Weasel was there,
yeah.
and
Was Surf still there at the time?
no, Surf was gone at the time when I was there.
Okay. So, and I understand you hired Pat Faris.
Yeah, Pat Faris was my last hire at HFS.
Okay.
And Pat was it was funny. If I would have stayed there longer, there would have been more people like Pat. The reason why I'm proud of that hire with Pat was that he was kind of the new vision and the new blood I was looking for in that radio station. Unfortunately, I couldn't see it all through, but certainly Robert took it and multiplied to it. But Pat to this day is a major talent and really smart and got it and understood what I was trying to do with the station at that time.
Were there any elements of the old HFS that you felt needed to be preserved?
The call letters.
What was the music that you were passionate about at the time?
Stuff that we were playing?
Yeah.
You got to remember, our evolution of HFS was a slow one when I was there. I mean, we still were playing, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Robert Cray, but at night we started playing a lot more, again, understand the time that we're talking about, In Excess and REM and U2 and Simple Minds and bands like that quite honestly weren't really played that often on the radio station.
Now, at the time, weren't there about 15 alternatives total across the country?
Probably. I mean, it was, HFS, DRE, FNX, K-Rock LA,
91X,
91X,
and BCN.
yeah, BCN, yeah, it wasn't that many.
So did you look at those stations for guidance, or did
I mean,
you...
to be honest, in the very beginning, I looked more at XRT because they were more in line with what we were doing at the time. K-Rock, LA, and DRE New York were probably a little more, at that particular time, a little more dancey, so Erasure and Depeche really weren't the climate of HFS at that time, although, when Depeche Mode did come to town, we co-promoted the show, and I think they had their first sellout with an HFS backing, and that was when we started playing more Depeche Mode on the channel, on the radio station.
Okay. What indicators did you have that maybe the more guitar-based bands would be, the core of alternative?
Honestly, just based on our research and what the response were to what we played, and through research and also through call out and through for lack of a better term, interviewing the audience.
Mm-hmm. Would you say U2 and REM were the leading core artists at that time?
Probably at that time, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't have a playlist in front of me. I mean, that was like 300 playlists ago, so I have no idea. But my gut is that's probably where it was.
Okay. What were some memories that you have of HFS that stands out?
Probably the first, big full festival that we did that was, quite honestly, was done by, I wouldn't say by accident, but was done with no, planning other than go, we should do this, And I mean, the lineup wasn't the best. As a matter of fact, just to show you how the lineup was, I actually called a friend of mine in New York to have their band open it because we needed a slot. But just to go in there in Northern Virginia and see, I don't know, the numbers range anywhere from 18,000 to 30,000, but somewhere in between there. See everybody in the park just seeing these bands. It was an amazing, to see the people that were the sponsors on the side, selling pizza and stuff like that, running out of food because they had no idea how many people were going to be there. That to me was a great moment. The fact that we put on, in my opinion, a very responsible, youth-oriented political show called Speak Your Mind, I think was important.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that, going to, Columbia, Maryland, and seeing bands like, Depeche Mode come to town, and really being a big part of it, and seeing the youth of the market start gravitating towards, to see all of the, I guess for lack of a better term, all of the younger bands that we were starting to champion actually start getting a following and sell records and stuff. I thought was really cool too.
Mm-hmm. how involved did you want issues or politics to be with the station?
I mean, I think it always was a part of the station, and probably still is, just because you're in the Beltway.
Mhm.
And I think that just by the makeup of that city, you're always going to talk about politics. But the fact that we had a political show on HFS on Sunday mornings, I think was a really big step, for us.
How did you position the station in terms of what was your vision of jock content? What did you want the jocks to do on the air?
Um, you know, quite honestly, was to actually talk about things that were relevant to the market, and also talk about music, but not in a musicologist way, but in a way that everyone can understand and not feel alienated. I think there was some times where you'd hear a jock talk about, the bass player from some band that, people marginally knew, and it just kind of went off to this other thing, but just kind of tightening up the brakes and making sure that, they got in with relevant, topics and relevant business, I think was important.
Did you put time limits on the breaks?
Oh, no, because some people, Weasel was a great example that he was the voice bite man. He just got in, got the information in and out, and he nailed it every time.
Okay. So you allowed a certain degree of jock freedom?
On their breaks?
Yeah.
For the most part.
What about with the music? I know that they got to pick their own music until about 90 or something.
Yeah, what we did was we had a, instead of selector, we had a thing called, I think it was music scan,
Mm-hmm.
which gave the jocks an opportunity to pick from categories, in the system. But you know what, we just, whether people wanted to believe it or not, it was, we needed to get ratings. I mean, I hate to be that blunt about it, but we did, and a 50,000 watt station needed to, to make numbers. Period. There was no excuses anymore. We had to get it done.
What briefly have you done since leaving HFS?
Well, after HFS, I went to WDRE,
Mhm.
programmed that station, and I went to work for Jacobs Media, where I consulted alternative stations, not just edge stations, but like the N in Seattle, the Point in St. Louis, K-Rock here in New York,
Mhm.
and then came to MTV.
Okay. Do you know what year you came to MTV?
I don't know, it was 2 years ago this month, so
Okay.
October '98.
And finally, did you have anything to do with Robert Benjamin coming to HFS?
I think Robert Benjamin had something to do with Robert Benjamin going to HFS, but when I was asked during the interview round what my vote was for Robert.
Oh, okay.
I think Robert was going to bring kind of the sensibilities that we were looking for, and I think, looking back at it in hindsight, I think my role really, Robert's role there at the time was to really kind of pick up where we left it and really speed up the process to get the station up and running.
Well, Tom, that'll do it. Thank you very much for the interview.